Hi guys, welcome to Synchro Mystic. I'm Wayne McCroy. This is Richard Willett, and together we're taking apart the narratives that are shaping our reality. How are you today, Richard? It's been a while since we spoke, my friend.
I'm good, thank you. Did you have a nice Christmas? And I don't know if we've done one this year. I can't remember. I can't keep up. We make so much content, write books, make videos, documentaries, weekly series, podcasts, that it's really hard to keep up with. So I don't know if this is the first one of 2026, is it?
I think we did one. Did we release it? I think we released it after January 1st, the last one we did.
Okay, fair enough.
I think we're only 2 weeks out. That's the thing. Sometimes we go a little longer than 2 weeks between these. Not on purpose, but that's just the way things plan out. But at any rate, yeah, I've been busy too. I've been updating my website and making more functionality there for the listeners and that kind of thing too. So it's been busy, but yeah, most certainly there's a lot to discuss, and a lot of this today that we're going to touch on here, Richard, has to do with the state of technology and the advent of technocracy across the world here, especially when you look at things going on here in North America. It's been a mess all across the board, and we're starting out this new year heading in some directions that I don't think are beneficial to the average person. So, what do you have to say about all that?
Well, I was listening to your podcast in the gym today. I had to put in the gym there because it sounds like I'll get out and about more than I do. But I was listening to one of your podcasts today, one of your most recent ones, talking about you talk about a specific document because that's how you do yours. You look into the specific documents and read them through. About what we're talking about now is this Technate, Technocracy Inc., but the way it's rolling out and what they are looking at. Now, here in the UK, we've got Palantir in the background rolling out their AI with a $1.5 billion, or pound even, contract with the Ministry of Defence, rolling out the Veterans Pass here. So they're using the Veterans Pass even, again, as the first digital card in the digital wallet. So it's rolling out here. Then on top of that, we've got this fake fighting between Elon Musk and Keir Starmer, who pretend to hate each other but are clearly on the same team in terms of the cult. So he's saying ban Grok. Obviously, that wasn't going to go anywhere, but it was to make Elon Musk look like, the people's champion. So obviously, then you've got the connection between Musk and Thiel, who are longtime friends, started PayPal together. And now they work together on SpaceX with shares in each other's companies. So it's a real it's a real kind of you're frozen there. Let's see if you come back.
No, I'm not frozen. Could you hear me?
I can hear you. You're just the video is frozen.
Okay.
There you go. There you're back now.
Okay. Now
There you go. So it's a really obvious thing that's happening over here in the UK in terms of the technology. But over there in the US, you've obviously got Peter Thiel previously funding Donald Trump, and now you've got him funding Elon Musk. So as far as I can tell, the Technate, the technocracy, although these are just minor partners and frontmen, Thiel and Musk, is there already. And then it goes into Greenland. And everyone's talking about not no one out in the alternative media, the true alternative media. They are talking about these things and have done for a long time. No one in the mainstream media is pointing out that Greenland was one of the biggest acquisitions in the Technate, including Canada and Venezuela, where they've just rolled out Starlink and ruined. Um, Everywhere they go, they roll out Starlink. So this Technate is moving on rapidly at the moment, isn't it? On both sides of the West here.
there's, there's a lot of important things bound up in this whole idea. You see, there's a very strategic reason they want Greenland. I don't think it's what they're saying on the surface of things here. And of course, you have the new rollout of empire here in the West that wants to expand and take over places such as Greenland. And of course, we've already entered into Venezuela. It's getting just absurd. And we called all this out last year, Richard, when we talked about the rise of the new Roman Empire. It's all encoded in there in the synchronistic metadata, and we're seeing it unfolding in real time right now. And of course, you have Palantir in the background doing a lot of stuff, and they're involved over there in many of the shenanigans going on in the UK, but they're also in the back pockets of various groups here in the US as well, pulling shenanigans. And one of the primary places that they have a contract right now that is of utmost importance in the mainstream press at the moment, they are actually one of the groups that has provided a lot of technology and infrastructure and tools for the organization known as ICE here in America. Now, of course, this is the immigration push, and you notice how they always use these same tropes over and over again. They want to get all of these illegals out of the country, and we have all of the media zoo and circus going on surrounding all of these ideas when you have these ICE raids in various portions of the country, and they're weaponizing this in a very psychological fashion. This is Psy-War at its highest point, being unleashed upon the American public at this point. And it goes beyond just psychological operations. This is actual Psy-War, as discussed, of course, by Lieutenant Colonel Michael Aquino, who, by the way, was the founder of the Temple of Set, which is a satanic organization. And I digress on that point. But this guy had a lot of influence within the high echelons of military intelligence, and he was involved in all kinds of psychological operations, warfare, and counter-terrorism operations, and things like this, supposedly counter-terrorism. But, of course, one of the main contracts right now is with Palantir, where they're utilizing a lot of these technologies that are helping to assist these ICE officers in finding and deporting illegal immigrants here in the U.S. And we see all the collateral damage going on in the process with all of that. And of course, they make that front and center, and it's been leveraged as a psychological operation in a heavy way against the American people. And most people can't see through that. They either pick one side or the other. They're picking the side that, okay, well, this is a militarized federal police force, and they're not incorrect in saying that. That's true. That's what this has become. This is essentially almost like the birth of the Gestapo in Nazi Germany, and it's the same kind of thing going on. These were the same kinds of influences happening at the time. That is what the German people were dealing with back at that time as well. So you have this influence on one side, and then on the other side you have all of these provocateurs. Many of them are paid provocateurs going out and organizing these different rallies and stuff like that and trying to stop these guys from doing their jobs. And we have all the conflict that's arisen because of that. And it's all engineered and orchestrated, and that's what people don't seem to understand. There's none of this that's organic in any way, shape, or form. This is all provocateured and engineered on purpose to create more of this conflict and create this division in the opinions of the masses. And most people can't see the psychological warfare aspect of that and are just picking one side or the other and expressing their opinions thereof. And in the meantime, everything is just going on quietly in the background with this rollout of technocracy. And a lot of the tools that they're using in this immigration sting, if you want to call it that they're doing with ICE, these are all the tools provided by Palantir. It's all predictive policing and this kind of thing. They rolled out some test phases of this way back in, I think it was 2012, back in New Orleans. The New Orleans Police Department utilized some of this Palantir technology for predictive policing and stuff like this. So you're talking about something on par with the movie Minority Report, where they're looking for pre-crime and they know where to actually set out their assets ahead of time before some conflict erupts. They're using these same kind of things right now with ICE. So they're setting up shop in all kinds of cities around the country here, and they're doing this based upon the algorithms, the policing algorithms that they're being given by Palantir. So where it is they're organizing, this is by and large where the artificial intelligence is telling them that they need to set up shop and set up operations, and it's giving them real-time information, tracking and monitoring people. And this is all about tracking people 24/7, and this goes beyond the bounds of just tracking illegal immigrants, if you want to call that out. It's all about tracking everybody 24/7, getting them all wired into the machine, becoming a node in the system. And we talked about this a little off air because this is essentially what's being done. So they want to monitor and track everything. And I think it's imperative right now that we understand that Peter Thiel and Palantir Technologies and Elon Musk and all of these guys, they're all in on the whole operation here. They all have a vested interest in setting up this infrastructure in America and around the world, especially in these important Western countries, like here in the US and there in the UK. We have some very important aspects of things going on, as well as across the European nations. There's all kinds of setup of this technocratic system that they're trying to build. And there's the same few companies that always have their pockets lined by producing this type of a system. And it's all going to be centralized into one utility at some point. And we're seeing that rolling out right now. And of course, there's a very real reason why they're looking at Greenland right now. And I don't know all the particulars of this. Of course, they'll tell you in the mainstream that it's strategic because, Russia and China might be able to have some type of access up there from coming from the north down to North America here. And they say it's got strategic militaristic uses in that way. But there's something else going on there. And I haven't quite put my finger on what it is. But there's something encoded in all of that, even in the name itself, Greenland. And if you've
Mm.
been following any of the esoteric side of this stuff, like we talk about all the time, Greenland is a soft encoding of the green language, as it's referred to by the Masons. This is the phonetic Kabbalah. This is coded language. It's the language of the birds. There's something else there. There's something big in Greenland that they all want some kind of access to. And I don't know exactly what that is, but I suspect it has something to do with the ley lines as they're laid out and access into the etheric portion of this reality. Etheric energies or some such thing. I don't know, and I don't have any evidence to really back that up. It's just an intuition I have about it based upon the language that's used surrounding this area. Because why else would you want a frozen wasteland like Greenland is? And it's crazy. And there's a reason that it was named Greenland initially, and it's probably a very esoteric reason that we may never get to the root of. Of course, there's always mainstream narratives that they prop up all the time with the foundation of these type places, but when you dig behind the surface a little bit further, you always find something pertaining to the occult with all of that, and I suspect it's no different here. But they want Greenland, and they've wanted it for a long time. And this actually goes back to Elon Musk's grandfather, Joshua Haldeman, and his group, Technocracy Incorporated, that he founded in Canada back in the 1930s. And this organization was all about setting up this technocracy. And it was all the same goals that the current Trump administration has: empire. It's empire expanding and taking these various portions of land in order to build this technocratic system. They have something else in mind, and they called it the Technate, as you referred to off air when we were talking. So we have all of these connections in place here, and I find it rather interesting that Elon Musk is involved with this. He's got a direct connection both to Palantir and the Trump administration. And we have all this stuff rolling out because his grandfather was one of the chief proponents of this. And there's a lot of interesting history to all of that as well that we may or may not get into on here. But what do you have to say about this, Richard?
Oh, it's such a clear and obvious connection that they're basically just starting this up again. Now, a couple of things about Greenland. The Greenland is called the Greenland of Denmark, which is obviously God. Greenland of Denmark. You also have the flag of Greenland, which looks a lot like, other than being shifted slightly to one side, the original flag of the Roman. I think it's the Holy Roman Empire. Um, it's very much the same. It's a white cross on a red flag, red background. So you've got these connections here, the empire connections that you've talked about. Another reason why I think that they want Greenland, and I think this was done on purpose and set in place a long time ago, because this thing never really got used for the purpose of what it's supposed to be used. I don't know if you've heard of this. It was called Camp Sentry. It's still there. It's a U.S. Army under the city, or sorry, city under the ice, built in 1959 for a Project Iceworm, intended for mobile nuclear missile deployment, but officially a research station. It's still there. They never really used it, but nuclear energy keeps popping up again and again and again. Cryonics wouldn't be a bad place to do your cryonics, would it, in the middle of Iceland? There's a huge underground, it's called a city base there, naval base there, that's still there now. So they might tie it into the, oh, we've got to stop China and Russia getting that absolute nonsense. The US and China work on 46,000. This is provable. Went to Congress because they were worried about 46,000 AI research papers between two of the main universities. They're swapping info back and forth. So there's no disconnection there. You've got Putin's a Habadnik, and so is Donald Trump in this messianic sect we talk about often. That this will be the tech to roll out that end times prophecy. But that Camp Century was really interesting to me. That was brought up by Christopher John Bjertness a while back. He first put me onto that, and its purpose was officially a scientific research station. Its true goal was to build tunnels for nuclear missile launchers aimed at the Soviet Union, part of the classified Project Iceworm. The construction, the U.S. Army built by excavating trenches in the sheet, covering them with snow and powering it with a portable nuclear reactor. A nuclear reactor, what could they use one of them for? Sounds like a particle accelerator, possibly. It sounds like something that CERN likes to mess around with. Again, they had one in the Manhattan Project, which was kept at Columbia University. You put all these things together, you've got a massive base there that could be used as a place to control the Technate from. And now, I don't believe that's where the broadcasting system will be and all of that stuff. I believe that that'll have a more Bible-esque end times Middle East thing. But if you're looking for a global cult and you want an underground base that's near enough to control some of these areas, the Technate from, Camp Hero would be perfect for that, and it's already there. I don't think it was supposed to be used for the original purpose that it was built for. I just get a gut feeling that that was a bit of a ruse. Like, we'll go in, we'll build it, and we're going to use that later down the line. Now, these are the guys are. So that was built in 1959. Now, Technocracy Inc. Was that around about that time? Couldn't have been that far from that.
That was prior to that. That was back in the 1930s. We're talking.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So
So I'm sure there's direct connections with all of this stuff if we actually start to explore that avenue of thought and really do the deep research. But I also find it interesting. Greenland would be the perfect place to build these AI data centers, especially when they have that underground facility there. And you're talking about tunnels to connect these different facilities. This is all in the cards that they've always done. They're all about these deep underground military bases, DUMBs, if you will. That's what they call them. And there's been a lot of talk about that, especially in the UFO circuit for many years, about these deep underground military bases. And there is some kernel of truth to this. We have all these interconnected tunnels underneath the continental U.S. that connect many of these different bunkers, if you want to call them that. So all of this is something that needs to be considered. So certainly, this would be a good place for them to build a massive AI data center in order to accommodate many of the things they want to accommodate. It's the perfect kind of landscape for it. The environment's a little bit cooler, so you have more access to fresh water and resources and stuff like that. Plus, the extreme cold temperatures are useful for operating some of these AI data center facilities that generate a lot of heat. It would help to keep the mainframes and stuff cooler as far as that stuff goes. Plus, there's also the aspect of this, if you want to tie in quantum computing into a data center, an AI data center. Quantum computers require extreme cold technologies, especially some of these adiabatic quantum computers, which, according to some who research these things, aren't exactly the same as a regular quantum computer. There's little minor differences, but they produce some of the same results, and they are extremely useful in trying to amalgamate AI resources together to build a type of infrastructure in this way. So I could see that being a strategic location for that. So maybe that has something to do with their interest in Greenland. And of course, they've been interested in it for a long time, as we said. And this project that you're talking about goes back to 1959. Well, that's post World War II, and you got to figure in between we had World War II between this group that was running this technocracy program, Technocracy Inc. in Canada. By the way, Joshua Haldeman, this is Elon Musk's grandfather on his mother's side. He got kicked out of Canada for that whole thing because he was aligned with communists and Russians and all kinds of different facets of things going on during that whole Cold War era as well. So he got exiled from Canada, and he migrated for a brief time to other areas of the world. He wound up in South Africa, where, of course, Elon's from, and he wound up in the US. And interesting story, last year I interviewed Elon Musk's babysitter, and
Yes.
she had told me some really interesting things about Elon's mother and his grandfather, who she claims actually faked his death in 1974, but he was alive and well in the early 1980s when she was actually present. And there's a whole story there. You could go back and listen to that interview if you want. And Richard, maybe I'll give you Rosemary's information because she just contacted me last week. She's got some more interesting information about some other important figures that she's willing to go public about now. So uh, that's interesting anyway, in and of itself. But that's a side note. I can't really prove any of that aside from her firsthand testimony that she claims. But this guy was a kind of linked to communist ideologies through and through. And he was all about this technocracy and setting up these technological things to bring about these socialist changes in the world that they wanted to see, and set up this Technate, or this Council of Wise Men. And where have you heard this stuff before? Where you have these 10 kingdoms ruled by a council of wise men, Club of Rome, all of this stuff, it all ties together, and this technocracy movement has everything to do with it. And they're not only utilizing technologies, they're wielding old occult principles as well, the old alchemical sciences and natural science principles to bring this stuff into being. It's actually become something beyond technocracy at this point. I like to call it technomancy. They're using these weaponized older sciences side by side with the new technological sciences we have, and they're affecting the human mind in many different ways with this and bringing about changes in the world based upon some of these occultic principles that they're leveraging. So we have this combination going on, and there's very few people, I think, at the topmost levels that really understand some of this stuff fully. Most of the people working on this stuff are clueless about what it is that they're feeding into. And that's the important thing. And you find this same mindset throughout all the different secret society groups, too. Most people that get involved with Freemasonry have no clue what it is they're involved with at the highest, most levels. They just think that it's an old boys club where if you play ball and you're on the level, you could go down to the car dealership and get a square deal and this kind of thing. And they just join it because it's a
Mm.
social club. But they all vote the same ways. They all support one another, whether they should or not. They all cover one another's sins for one another. And this is all part of the blood oath that they take to maintain their secrecy and to maintain their brotherhood across the bounds of all of it here. But that's a side trail for another time. I'm getting a little off topic with that, but certainly we see these same types of things going on at the highest, most levels, especially as it pertains to the setup of this AI panopticon control grid, because that's what it's all about at the end of the day. It's setting up this beast system and utilizing it by those select few, those technocrats in this world, or the technomancers, if you want to call them that. And I would say probably Peter Thiel's closer to a technomancer than anyone else at this point when you look at some of the things he's talked about. He did a whole lecture series just earlier, sometime last year, talking about the Antichrist.
Mm.
I'm not kidding. You could look this up. He did a whole series about the Antichrist. So he knows about some of the spiritual angles to this, and yet he's still building this beast system. And some of the technologies that Palantir's rolling out are having a major effect in this world. And if you, even if you just look at the origins of the name Palantir, where this comes from Tolkien, J.R.R. Tolkien, in The Lord of the Rings. This is the scrying mirror. So you could see the occult angle to all of this, and it was all built into it on purpose. And Peter Thiel is one of the proponents of this, and I think he's one of the major players behind the scenes with all of this. And then you factor in other individuals who've had a lot of influence, guys like Curtis Yarvin, who we discussed on a past broadcast here,
Yep.
Richard. And we could see the angles of where all this goes, and the connections never end. It's always there to be had. So, what are your thoughts on all that?
Exactly. Another connection to add to that, Curtis Yarvin is fascinating. Is that Dark Enlightenment, which is Kabbalah, obviously. But you come up with another guy we haven't mentioned, Anthony Lewandowski, who has an AI cult. Literally, well, he calls it an AI church, but I'll go ahead and call it an AI cult, where at least 2,000 members worship an AI godhead. Now, he went to prison for stealing smart car secrets, which is just an excuse to get him under their thumb. And who was it who let him out on the last day of his first term and pardoned him? It was Donald Trump. So now he owes Trump one. So they're all in on it together. That's just part of it. One thing I did notice, and this technomancy stuff fascinates me. So well, let's get in, I think, into that and explain a little bit more what you say about that. Doge to me was straight away about when as soon as he came out and he said it was about getting rid of government waste. I was like, that's quite obviously exactly what Technate was about. It was about getting rid of they wrapped it up in getting rid of waste, energy waste. So do you get more out of things than you put in? But that means you and me. Are we a waste on the health department? So RFK Jr. with his Habadnik connections is putting together a technology, or at least making way for the technology to for you to be judged on whether you're fit and healthy enough to be cared for, whether you're a useless eater. This whole thing about Doge, this government waste thing, was about the psychology of you thinking that do I get more out of this than I put in? It was a brainwashing technique. It's never meant to work properly, in my opinion, because it was so shoddily done. I mean, Elon Musk is half the time spending his days staring at a spoon off his tits. I mean, he's not going to do these things. But the point was, the psychology was there, was getting people to go, oh, we're going into a world where you will be deemed and judged on what you bring to the system. And if you're not bringing more than you're taking out, you're done for. Now, that sounds kind of fair. It's not when you're making up the rules for the system, because that's not how it works. And in war, and I said this in a walk and talk video I did today, I started to do on my YouTube. In war, if me and Wayne were soldiers in war, we never would be because we'd never go fight other people for, but you know what I mean. Let's take that as ready. And Wayne was shot. I wouldn't just go, you're going to be a bit of a burden, Wayne. I'll go over there. We'll leave you here because you're going to be a bit, I can't carry you all the way home. You help each other. That was the point. Leave no man behind. So they're getting rid of that. You will be, the psychology will be every man for themselves. And that has a transhumanist, Kelly Potic world of shells. Get rid of what makes you human. You love each other. You take care of each other. The people that are born with disabilities, you take care of them. You look out for each other. That's the point. And it's the inverse of do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. It's just it's not even the inverse. It's the getting rid of completely, putting others first. It's completely satanic and anti-human, isn't it? And that's the psychology. That's just the psychology part, isn't it?
Yeah, and what you described there exactly is socialism, each according to their ability and each according to their need. So they're eliminating those who are a lot more needy and less productive than others. And we see an example of this happening in Canada right now. They're more than willing to euthanize whoever is willing to be euthanized. I mean, think
Same
about
here in the UK, mate. They've
it.
put another
It's
one through in the
getting
UK.
Yeah, it's getting out of hand, and these ideologies are spreading across Western culture now. Remember, what was it? Probably about 10 years ago or something, when Obama was still in office, and there was all of this in the alternative media about death panels. Well, it turns out that wasn't conspiracy theory, was it? We're seeing that unrolling in real time right now. The whole notion of death panels and this kind of thing. It's just the normalization process. Right now, they're only doing this to people who are willing to do it. But of course, they're coerced in many different ways into doing this. So you're talking about the whole shifting of the Overton window with this ideology. And this started way back in the 1980s. You remember Jack Kevorkian, Dr. Kevorkian?
No.
You don't remember that, Richard? Uh, this is where I'm showing my age a little, but this stuff goes way back. Dr. Kevorkian was on trial many times here publicly in the U.S. press for doing assisted suicides for people
I
way
do
back in the
remember, yeah.
1980s. And they kind of normalized this idea a little bit more now. Now it's acceptable public government practice in Canada. I think they euthanized like 27,000 people or something last year, if I'm not mistaken. Like they did this assisted suicide thing. So here's what they've been doing. Okay, you line up, you get your COVID shot, and then you wind up crippled for life because of the COVID shot. So rather than try to help you with that or come up with a solution for that harm that they did to you, they're saying, well, we'll help you kill yourself if you want. This is exactly what's going on. And they've normalized this whole process. And this smacks of socialism, communism. That's most certainly what the mantra is. And you can see how this ideology has its roots in these very dark occult places as well. So when you look at all of that, you could see where much of this comes from. And I've actually in the past traced a lot of these socialist and communist ideals back into the Theosophical Society and back to Madame Blavatsky and Colonel Alcott. They're the ones who primarily promulgated this whole notion of modern socialism and communism into the culture here. They established this through the use of the publishing company called Lucis Trust, used to be called Lucifer Trust, that publishes for the United Nations.
Yeah.
It's a publishing company for the United Nations. And this is where they got their foot in the door with a lot of that. And these ideologies began to spread. So you have all of these socialist ideals that are being promulgated, and there's this occult side to it that most people are completely and wholly unaware of. See, most people don't want to consider politics and occultism go hand in hand,
Yeah.
but they do. Most people can't see that presence of occultism in the political structure of things, but it is most certainly there. And now this crosses the bounds into the technological sphere as well, because they want to set up this control grid to make things easier for themselves. They want an artificial intelligence system in place to monitor people and to make decisions based upon that. Because what this does essentially is this takes the blame for bad things happening out of the hands of these controllers of this world. They'll blame the algorithm, they'll blame the computer. When there's nobody to be held accountable for things that happen, that gives them a free pass. That's
Mm.
exactly what they're looking for. And we're seeing examples of this happening in real time in the real world. For example, you could use the example, this has cropped up in the news media multiple times recently, where a driverless car runs over somebody or something like that. Well, who do you blame? Who's to be held accountable? Who's the responsible party? Well, it's the computer, the AI. And how do you hold an AI accountable? You can't. And this is part of the problem, but this is what they want, because this gives them a free pass. So when the bad things happen, they'll throw their hands in the air and say, sorry, the AI messed up. We can't control that. It's bound to happen sooner or later where there's some type of an accident. We're just developing these technologies, and we don't exactly know or understand what they're doing. So they throw their hands in the air and they disavow responsibility for that.
And
They
people
blame the
wouldn't
machine.
even
This is
like sorry, what you're saying there, people wouldn't even think, hang on a minute, am I being experimented on then? Is that what you've just said? They wouldn't even think that, would they?
No, they wouldn't, but this is exactly what's going on. And this is the scapegoat that they're manufacturing for themselves, the AI control system. You see, they could blame the AI. Sorry, must have been a mess up in the system. There's nothing we can do for you. Sorry about that. So that's what they're counting on, because then this takes away the blame from them and it scapegoats the AI. Do you understand how deep this runs? And it takes all accountability out of their hands, all responsibility out of their hands, and then they could unleash untold terrors on the people of this world and have a plausible deniability about it. That's what these people are always about at the end of the day, plausible deniability for any of this stuff. So when the AI goes rogue, they'll just throw their hands in the air and say sorry. Well, they hide it out in their bunkers underground.
And
And
they
this
have
this
got
is
them, yeah.
the thing we're looking at.
Yeah, Musk is Musk. Well, I'm sure he's got one, but I know Zuckerberg for definite was building a bunker on his ranch. I know someone who lives down the well, it's down the road, but miles and miles down the road from them, and they came over to film with me a few years back, a year or so ago, and they said that no one knows what it's about. Well, exactly, I think exactly what you've just said as well, and it's the same old psychology, isn't it? You've got Planned Parenthood at one end, trying to stop children being born, which is eugenics, which is Bill Gates, and then at the other end, you've got this euthanasia. And I've had this recently. My father-in-law is in hospital now. He says he had the jab. He was fine before that. He's not fine now, and they were almost pushy with him with a non-resuscitation. And he's like, no. And they go, well, you might come back as a vegetable. And he was like, well, they didn't use that term, but he used that term. And he's like, well, I'll take my chances. My own dad passed away a year and a bit ago, and he was absolutely fine until he had two of these vaccines. And they're not vaccines, mRNA experimental. I tried to warn him. No one listens to me. But I've obviously, me and you haven't had them, and none of our kids have had them and stuff like that. But he was absolutely fine. He'd never had any major illnesses before that. And then suddenly he had three strokes and got colon cancer. And
It's a sad state of affairs, and
yeah, and it's
it's more
real.
prevalent. It's very real, and it's more prevalent than people are comfortable to admit.
Mm,
I could talk personally in the circle of people I know. I know quite a few people who have died now having post-COVID jabs, and they were perfectly fine beforehand, and then all of a sudden they developed these conditions, and just some of them even just dropped dead, just out of the clear blue sky. And these are people I personally knew,
yeah.
and that's the sad thing. And everybody you talk to has a story like that. But of course, they're still pushing these things, even though it technically was not a vaccine by definition. They had to literally change the definition of what a vaccine is in order to get it passed for emergency use authorization. And it was never something that was approved in any way, shape, or form at the time. But they got people to line up and be guinea pigs with it. And now we're starting to see the real world results of that. And it's sad to see. And I feel the same as you, Richard. I tried telling people, tried warning people. I was warning people before COVID was even a thing, before these vaccines even came out. I was
Hmm.
telling people about the future of vaccines and what they were trying to do with them. And people just wouldn't listen. But now they're a bit more receptive to it. But sadly, for some of them, it's too late. The
Well,
damage has been done.
let's connect that back to Trump then, and to the Technate. It's so obvious. I mean, it's very clear. This isn't going around, 3 or 4 generations down the line. Donald Trump took the money away from the World Health Organizations, Bill Gates, to make it look like they were taking money away from this. Gave it straight to Gavi, Bill Gates. Look at she took it out of his left pocket and put it in his right pocket. He ran Operation Warp Speed that pushed all this stuff out and experimented on people. Now he's in there with RFK Jr., who's supposed to be saving the world, although he's a Habadnik as well, and he's making it easier for this stuff because that still isn't stopping the mRNA vaccines rolling around. They're not vaccines, experimental gene therapies. He's not at all. And then you have Donald Trump, who's done all of that. We could just ignore that bit. And then Elon Musk and Peter Thiel, the technocrats, Technate, technomancers, as you say, funding Trump. He pushed all this stuff out. Now here in the UK, we've got Nigel Farage, who's supposed to be the, people's champion and all of this stuff. He's just taken in one of the guys that was doing exactly the same here into his reform party, and it's totally tanked the lot because the guy is an absolute crook, but he's an open crook because they're all the bloody same. And Nigel Farage is in there hanging out with Elon Musk. And Palantir is being rolled out. And who signed the Palantir contract off here? But they're supposed to be against each other. Keir Starmer and Elon Musk. Who signed it off? Keir Starmer for Palantir. Who's Peter Thiel? Who's in business with Elon Musk through SpaceX. One of the sub companies of that is Starlink. I mean, come on. If I can do this, that's what winds me up, I think, Wayne, more than anything, is if I can look at these things and see it, and you don't even have to have the big picture of it. All we've got to do is say, there's some questions here about these people. There's some real questions here, and something doesn't add up. These things they're doing, they're saying they're doing the opposite. And then you look at Technocracy Inc. and what they want to do, and you think, hang on a minute, what could a messianic sect do with that technology? What could they bring about? Oh, social credit score is something we don't want. Bad China, isn't it? It's awful over there in some of the places they've rolled it out, although it's not as far spread as most people think it is. Oh, we don't want that. What do you think your digital wallet's going to be? It's your universal basic income. And how you think you're going to get your universal basic income? You're going to have to make sure that you're looking after your health properly. And we know if you're not, and you're becoming a burden on the state, because we'll have your biometrics fed to us through your mRNA technology and your nanobots that are building some sort of weird skeleton inside you and killing you. Now, this sounds mad. It is mad because these people are mad, and this is true. It is true. And even if me and Wayne, like, we don't agree on everything, but most of these subjects we tend to, we're wrong. If you were some sort of government, you go, hang on a minute, well, let's, really cared, I better look into this. You wouldn't go, it's fucking stupid, isn't it? You would literally go, these people seem nefarious to me, I'll go and look into them. You've got underground bases in New Mexico. One of the places in the Technate, Wayne, was the Caribbean. Who's in the Caribbean? The Virgin Islands. Who had a private island in the US Virgin Islands? Epstein. Also has a place in Zorro Ranch in New Mexico, by the way, where there's loads of underground facilities there. So that leads into that bit where I think they're testing this new refined human. And if you guys think this is mad, have a look at Habad Lubavitch. The reason why I go on about them so much is because they genuinely believe that 150,000 human beings with refined bodies will rise from the Mount of Olives, including Robert Maxwell, who's Ghislaine Maxwell's dad, and Prince Philip's mum as well. She's buried there. They will literally rise from the dead, zombie style, in refined bodies. That's the words and the terms they use with their Messiah. How do you think those refined bodies are going to become made? They've spent decades underground and under the ice experimenting with gene therapies that you lot have now got in your bodies that you'll pass on down to your next generations, as well as information which can be stored to your DNA, by the way. People don't even know how they make clones. It's not that hard. Like, I couldn't do it here, to be fair, but, like, it's actually quite simple. The process of it is quite logical. And they can do that and have been able to do that for a long time. Bill Clinton didn't ban cloning. He banned the government's funding of cloning so he could privatise cloning. Where do you... and I think Ghislaine Maxwell was doing this undersea, by the way, with her Terramar stuff. And why do you think... and people are like, well, it's just mad. Yeah, of course it's mad. They're mad. But she thinks her dad's going to come out of the grave from the Mount of Olives where he's buried. So, come on, give me some slack here. It's at least worth a look into. The seabeds come under no jurisdiction at all. They are open seas. They don't come under it. There's no laws. So they can do all sorts of cloning down there. Not that it's banned anyway, because Bill Clinton didn't ban it in the US Virgin Islands. And it's not banned in some other places. So this stuff all comes together to say these people are mental. And all people are looking at, Wayne, is give me the Epstein logs. I want to know when on the pedo plane.
Right. it goes so much deeper than that, and that's the whole thing. And just to speak to what you're speaking about with Ghislaine Maxwell and these undersea research facilities and things like that, that we really have no evidence that perhaps they exist or anything like. We can't point to something
Yeah.
concrete and say this, but just go and look. And this is a big thing for people to understand. Okay, if you want to have a deeper understanding as to some of the hidden things that are going on in this reality, go and look in the ufology movement, in the UFO culture circles, to some of the things they're talking about, and you will find that much of what they talk about has a kernel of truth to it. Now, a topic that has become very popular recently among UFO culture or ufology circles is the underwater UFOs, the USOs, unidentified submerged objects. There's a real thing that happens with this. It's a real phenomenon. It's been observed. And they have been saying for years that there are some types of underwater alien bases, some of which could be located off the coast of California, some in the Caribbean near Puerto Rico, and various other places around the world. This has been largely documented by UFO researchers for decades. So, is there a kernel of truth to some of this? Maybe these bases are there and maybe they are doing covert experimentation, but maybe they are indeed run by human beings and not necessarily aliens, or maybe there's some combination factor there going on with this. Maybe there are some non human intelligences guiding and directing things as well. I don't know. I can't say. We have no evidence to really point to anything concrete to prove such a notion, but that is an important detail for people to realize. Look at what they're talking about in the ufology culture, and you will find that there are some important subcontexts within what they present that have kernels of truth to them, and there is something behind it. Although I think a lot of times they use the term alien in this connection to extraterrestrial manifestations or origins of this stuff as a type of deflection to what's going on. And this actually plays out within the ufology commercial if you look at something called MILABs. These are military abductions. When you look at the UFO abduction phenomenon, there are some people who have reported where there's a human element involved with this. And it's a type of psychological operation going on where they're tinkering with your memory and stuff like that, but it's a human presence behind it, not necessarily an alien presence. But this is one of those things that actually crosses into the spiritual side of things as well. So perhaps there is some type of a non human presence that has something to do with it as well. I don't want to lead people in a direction of a train of thought with this. I'm not trying to say that there's nothing to the alien observation to all of it. I think there most certainly is, but I don't think it translates exactly how it's presented in mainstream ufology. I don't think it has to do necessarily 100% with off-world alien beings that came down to planet Earth and this kind of thing. There's something else going on with that. And all of it has to do with the tinkering with the human genome and with engineering man into something new, into the post-human era, because that's what they're all about.
Mm.
And there have been an awful lot of things going on for decades within the auspices of the military-industrial complex, where they've utilized different technologies and experimentation in ways that they don't talk about publicly, and some of the results of which are only becoming public just now, even though it's been going on for probably 50 to 70 years, at least, bare minimum, with a lot of these things, especially as it pertains to the human genome projects and stuff like that. So they're far in advance of what they would like for you to believe. Of course, this is only one subset of the population. This is what you would call a breakaway civilization. That's probably the best term I've heard to describe this. It's a subgroup within the greater elitist culture who has sort of this own separate type of society that is completely removed from the main society. That it's actually very parasitic of the main society. And this is where the resources and stuff get funneled, and there's secret technologies and developments that happen behind the scenes with this. and it's all hidden behind the auspices of NGOs, non-governmental organizations that have government contracts, and all the things get funneled through these private corporations and subcontracted out from government organizations like DARPA and like all the other intelligence agencies and the military industrial complex, the whole web that goes on there. It's the octopus of control. But
Mm.
essentially, it all eventually goes through private corporation, through their hands, and is controlled there. And this, of course, has been exposed just within the past couple of years now. In once again the UFO culture, ufology, you need to really follow this stuff. Even though a lot of people try to laugh it off and try to discredit it and say there's nothing to it, even though you can't objectively prove aliens from outer space or some such thing by looking at what they're telling you. If you listen to what they're telling you, there's important things being revealed there. And what's been revealed is there was a program, and it's been going on since at least the 1940s, that has been revealed within the auspices of government now, and there's been real congressional hearings and stuff looking at this. It's called the Legacy Program within the UFO culture. And supposedly, people within this legacy program have access to extraterrestrial technologies and the development thereof. And it's all handled by private corporations, private contractors, and it's all hidden behind classification within the intelligence community. And only those with need to know have access to any portion of the program. And it's even been hidden from Congress and congressional oversight. And this is what's caused an uproar quietly in the background that most people don't hear about publicly, but there has been congressional hearings and everything exposing this. And go back and look at the disclosures given by David Grush. That's who kind of surrounds this, but to me, he kind of seems like, I don't know, a honeypot or an asset of the intelligence agency that's just trying to give a public face to some of this stuff to kind of roll out acceptance
Mm.
of some of it. But primarily, what you'll find is these whistleblowers and stuff that are coming out. They're trying to reveal this information. But what's at the core of it is those that are involved with these types of programs, they want immunity from any kind of liability from this stuff before they would disclose any of it to the public. And I suspect we'll never really see true disclosure of what's going on with this. But there have been meetings within congressional hearings and stuff like that to those with appropriate security clearances and things where they've supposedly revealed some of this information and the existence of some of these technologies now. So we're waiting to see what's going to happen with this. But things have escalated along those lines. But this all ties back to these very same things. That's the important concept here. I need people to really latch onto. You need to pay attention to what the ufologists are saying. And even though you could poke holes in a lot of what they're saying, that's the way disinformation or misinformation is supposed to work. They will give you 90% good information and 10% bad information so that you poke a hole in the 10% bad information and then reject 100% of the information, even though there's truth there. That's why many of these supposed leaks and whistleblower testimonies are often controlled and contrived, and they're put out there on purpose. This is how they control the release of information about this stuff. And it's oftentimes used to obfuscate what's really going on. And that's, I'll get off my soapbox now, Richard, and let you answer to some of that.
Well, really interesting the point that we're getting to, I suppose, in this episode now is we've gone from the Technate to the transhuman who will be manipulated within that technate. Now, I think there's going to be different levels, personally, of that, or different types. You'll have your human enhanced, human 2.0. You'd have different levels, almost like your priest class as well, that would work in different ways. And might be levels of lack of control over them, in terms of the higher you go, the less control the system has over you, in that sense. Um, but there'll be different levels. But what's really fascinating is that this goes into the spiritual, as you say, and use it with the Stargate project. The human being the Stargate for something elsewhere. And then that comes into your latest book as well. Um, about the swapping over of the two worlds. They want to come into this world, whatever is connected to bringing these theories and these themes out, this ongoing anti-human agenda, which clearly it is a death cult. At its very core, some will say that the beings from another en- environment, another dimension that's not far from this one, that maybe we used to be able to see at some point, want to swap places, trading places with us. I think that makes total sense to me. And it's the upside down, inside out world where we will go where they are and they will come where we are. But the weird thing is, and I think we discussed this before, which makes me kind of laugh a little bit, is that they're turning this world into their world. So what would be the point? Because they're coming here and they're not going to come into our world and skip in the fields. They're going to come into our world where they can control this world. But I suppose that's not what they've got where they are now. It's a real fascinating subject. And if, as weird as this sound, guys, do you tell me where you were before you were born and where you go where you die? Because until someone can tell me the answers and prove the answers to me to those two questions, anything is possible to me. Because those two bookends, this bookshelf don't have an ends on it. They don't. And this story could go anywhere.
Yeah, it's really fascinating when you get to the spiritual dynamic of all of this, the nuts and bolts behind it. And the deeper you dig into it, the more you find that this seems to be the probability of what's really going on. Is you have some type of entity, intelligence, force from somewhere else that wants to step in to physical reality here, into physical density, if you want to call it that, and exist here. And this, of course, is something that's referred to by Rudolf Steiner as the building of the eighth sphere, or also known as the world of shells by the Hermeticists. And we've discussed this stuff in the past. And this is certainly what's going on. So you have these spiritual intelligences from somewhere else that want to swap places with the human being, want to hide here. And of course, we could go and really explore the depths of the reasons why that is, what exactly they're looking for, what motivates them to do that, and that kind of thing. And it has to do, of course, with the study of eschatology, in my view. And I've laid down some of this in the newest book that I just released. And of course, we have
Uh-uh.
all kinds of other things that go along with that. So this seems to be what's going on at the core of all of it. You have these spiritual intelligences that want to swap places with the human being for some reason or another and build this ulterior reality that is known as the eighth sphere by Rudolf Steiner. And you could call it hell if you want. I mean, it's most certainly the definition of what that would be: total separation from God, total separation from the spiritual, and just the dense physical being what there is, the manifestation thereof. And this is what these essences are looking for. That's what they want to build. They want to build this separate world unto themselves that they could control and be the gods of. And of course, it's an anti human philosophy because it goes against everything spiritual and right and what our true destiny as human beings is supposed to be. And this aligns with the transhumanist movement and notion of things going forward to this post human template that they want to put into being here. So, uh, those, of course, are discussions for another day because we're getting short on time here
Yeah,
from
we
this
are.
broadcast.
Yeah.
We could go on for another hour about that stuff easily.
Before we wrap it up, then I'll just to tie it back to the start in the Technate situation. We're talking about the rolling out of Greenland. Donald Trump, his partnerships with Elon Musk and Peter Thiel, and these technocrats. The reason why I think it's important to talk about the things that you've just spoken about, and you speak in your new book, the Enoch Polarity and the End of Time, is because I think, in my opinion, these guys, the Elon Musks, the Donald Trumps of the world, are working for those entities. And that's the role they're filling here. And the end times narratives fit in with allowing something into this world to control that technological system. So that's why I think it's really important, because there's this occult, esoteric, satanic background to all of this stuff, which is what's driving it. And the real driving force is they're scared of something and they're doing the work of something that wants something from us. So we've got something here that something wants, and they're doing the work of it. And all of this goes back to them serving that entity that they would call their god.
Winner, winner, chicken dinner. That's all I have to say about that. Uh, that's essentially 100%, in my view, what's happening. They're being guided and steered by some spiritual intelligence that's beyond human that is directing a lot of this. And they do seem to fear whatever that is and do what it says, or whether they realize it or not, they're being influenced by it. Let's put it that way. That's the best way to describe it. Whether they're conscious of the occult angle of it or not, they're being directed by these spiritual intelligences that go beyond this physical realm as we recognize it. So all of this is coming into being, and we're seeing it manufactured in real time. And certainly it has to do with that angle of things. And I think that they're all players on the world stage. It's all stagecraft. A lot of it is manufactured by some of these spiritual intelligences, and it's directed from behind the scenes. And most of us have no clue as to who's really calling the shots with this stuff. And the leaders, the supposed leaders of this world, are tight-lipped as to where they get their marching orders from, or they claim to come up with it but themselves. They like to take credit for things. Donald Trump likes to take credit for a lot of stuff that he doesn't necessarily
Yeah.
have much of anything to do with. But certainly we're given these actors on the world stage, and they're performing their roles really well, especially Donald Trump. He's always central to everything that's out there in the news media. They always have some kind of a backhanded comment about Trump because
Mm.
he's the purposeful and deliberate scapegoat for all of it. And this is the role of any president of any country in this world, any world leader. That's their role, and they took up that role purposely because they get some kind of benefit from it, whether it be worldly power or fame or wealth or some such thing. They like the attention, and they're good at drawing the attention. Donald Trump is a key player to all of this because he loves the attention, and he's a master at manipulating people's emotions. So most people don't want to accept that, but it is true.
Mm.
He knows what he's doing. The guy knows what he's doing. He's not ignorant about it. He's not that narcissistic. He puts this stuff out to purposely rile people up, and he laughs at you the whole time, just like the rest of them do. But I'll digress on that point.
Guys, totally true. Well, you guys can, we'll see you hopefully in a couple of weeks' time. You can find my work at iconic.com on my video work. Put in Richard Willett or some may conspire into Substack. You'll find me there, and WhatsApp Rich on X. Also, I've been putting much more videos on my YouTube channel, so just put Richard Willett in YouTube. And I've been doing like every other day, every 2 or 3 days, doing a walk and talk vlog, catching up on where some of these news stories fit in. Wayne, where can they find your work and your new book?
Well, they can find everything that I do on www.alchemicaltechrevolution.com. I'm currently undergoing some changes on the website to make things more user friendly and to make it more accessible to everybody. So just be patient with me as we do that. I'm trying to get a lot of my back catalog up on the website directly because prior to this, I was actually hosting the podcast through Spotify. It's still hosted there, but I have the ability now to host things on my website. So that's what I am doing because in this world of censorship, you never know
Yeah.
when somebody's going to pull the plug on you or the algorithm's going to shut you down and shadow ban you. So in order to put important work out, sadly enough, it needs to be done on your own platform. So I have that platform. I have my website, and I'll be able to host all of my content there, whether some third party like Spotify or YouTube wants to pull it down or not, it'll still be there on my website. So that's what I'm working on. When's your new book coming out, Richard?
I'm still halfway. When I get time to actually edit it, the editing process has taken me longer than the writing process.
That's a
So I'm about 14 chapters in. I've got about 4 chapters to finish, and then there's the over. So I'm thinking March time, but yeah, I'm trying my best to get it done as quick as possible. In and around being a parent, in and around trying to remember everything and making new content every week. So can't wait to get it out. I just want to get the first one out, and then then the floodgates are open. I've got so many more ideas, but this first one's been, yeah, you know what it's like. You're already there. You're already 4 or 5 in now. So, um, yeah, March, April, probably. Hopefully, it's done. I just can't get it edited as quick as I'd like to.
Understandable. It's definitely a process, and there's a lot more that goes into it than people realize. But
Yeah, there is.
looking
Okay.
forward.
Yeah, well, no, I've got to change the title now because it's kind of changed a little bit. We'll see you in a couple of weeks' time, guys. And yeah, the best way to keep this information from being hidden is word of mouth. Go and tell your friends about this madness because this is very, very real. Even if it's not, these people think it is, and these people are doing some horrific things with your money, your tax money. So let's stop them. We'll see you in a couple of weeks' time. Take care. Bye.